Hi everyone, I hope you are having a good time. Today we are going to spend some time understanding a very interesting and important topic which we generally call the Renaissance movement. This video is actually a copy of our lecture number 17, but based on the report of several listeners, the audio there was not very clear. So, for making you better understand the concept, I'm uploading it again with hopefully a better audio quality this time. So, to start with, let me tell you that when we talk about the Renaissance movement, we will try to cover understanding this concept in several lectures, and this is going to be the first of them. In this video, we will be talking about the concept of Renaissance. We will try to understand what is this movement and what does it signify. To start with, it was in Florence, a famous city in Italy, that the Renaissance movement was initiated. Renaissance actually means revival or rebirth. I hope that you are following the left part of the screen. A logical question would follow, and that would be revival or rebirth of what? The answer is the revival or rebirth of classical learning, classical art, architecture, literature, and so on. These different fields of classical knowledge together would constitute what we will call the classical learning. And it was actually this learning that was revived. Now, another question that should be there in your mind is, why do we say that this was a process of rebirth or revival? We should remember that the Middle Ages were a stagnant period when Europe was passing through the Dark Ages. In these times, intellectual activities were virtually non-existent, and the energies of the people were spent mostly in wars within and outside Europe. Historical events like the Black Death also prevented many people from intellectual labor. When the Renaissance was about to begin, it was a time of comparative calm when men of letters started looking back to the Greek and Roman classics, and in that sense, their recourse to and reading of them was a kind of a revival and a rebirth. I hope this makes sense. Let's move forward. Now we examine the characteristics of the Renaissance period, and they should be there on the right side of your screen. Here we have to mention the interest of the Europeans in classical scholarship and classical values. In other words, the knowledge reservoir that the Greeks and the Romans had left in the form of many books authored by these legendary figures were lying in the libraries across Europe and even in other areas where these people were ruling. But as mentioned earlier, wars and the crusades that we will discuss in the next lecture, of course, they prevented people from learning and scholarship. For the present, what we need to learn and keep in mind is that during the Renaissance, people started taking interest and saw it a great source of improving life and the value system. I am talking about classical learning. So this interest in classical learning and their values constituted the beginning of the Renaissance. Another characteristic feature of the time was decline of the feudal system. You know that when we were talking about the Middle Ages in our previous lectures, we talked about the feudal system with two visible classes, or the feudals and the working class. We had also mentioned the merchant and the middle class growing in size. With the passage of time, feudal values were questioned and life became more commercialized. The world saw a rising middle class with a different set of values. With the rise of the middle class, the feudal system and its values were declining, or you can say were on the decline. Apart from them, another important thing characteristic of the Renaissance spirit was the inventions, discoveries, and of course the explorations. In a sense, the classical learning paved the way for people to seek new avenues of knowledge, to adventure far and wide, and to seek many new things for with the objective of bringing improvement in their lives. It is in this context that we mention the contribution of historical figures like Vasco da Gama and Columbus. Then the discovery of America, which of course was perhaps the greatest discovery the world had ever witnessed. So these kinds of discoveries and explorations were also taking place in that period. We may argue that the desire to discover and to explore made people to come across and to mix with other people. Such interaction patterns with other people and cultures may not be underestimated for its positive impact on life and its standards. So this was a kind of a positive thing that was driving humanity or the people in Europe toward a better future. With reference to the spirit of inventions, we cannot forget the printing press, which made it a lot more easier for people to write and to disseminate knowledge through the help of paper. In that sense, the knowledge started spreading. Earlier, there would be fewer people, maybe the nobles, the gentry, or the tiny ruling class who would have access to written documents and rare manuscripts, but the arrival of printing press made it possible for many to have access to them at a very low cost. This was again an impetus to expedite and to speed up the process of learning. Before the arrival of printing press, it was difficult for a common man to have access to reading those masterpieces. Then you have the historical importance of the use of the mariner compass, of course, which had a great role in determining the potential or the capability of human beings to bring wonders to their lives in the scope of traveling. We also make a mention of gunpowder, although it's an earlier discovery, but as if we compare it with the invention of wheel, we can say that these and other inventions and discoveries may not be the actual products of the Renaissance period, but they had a message to convey. All of them informed that the Renaissance men about that they were capable of doing wonders. Man has the power and the strength, and therefore all men should strive for a better life through learning and through mastering and through scholarship. The events and products led to the development of a mindset that became the aim and objective of the Renaissance. And this objective or this aim was inculcated through humanistic education relating to the human ability to do many things. When we discuss the Renaissance and the events associated with it, we should not forget that many dedicated men of letters were driving this movement forward. If we cannot ignore literary writers like Sir Philip Sidney, Edmund Spenser, Christopher Marlowe, or William Shakespeare when we talk about the Elizabethan literature, so should we remember the Renaissance men who had in one way or the other a contribution to the promotion and to the advancement of this mindset or this movement. There are many figures, and we will be discussing them or maybe some of them in the coming lectures too, as it is difficult for us to cover them all or at one time or in 2 or 3 lectures. To give you a taste of the knowledge and excellence of some of these people, I have selected three Italian men who were associated with the Renaissance movement. These were highly talented people exuding energy and skills. First, we talk about Leonardo da Vinci, about whom it is said that no branch of study was foreign to him. For instance, he was a painter, a sculptor, an engineer, an inventor, and a writer. And there are other fields also in which he had mastery, but we have listed only five of them. So if you look at Leonardo in the scope of this lecture, we can say that he was five in one. Means normally you need five people to master five fields, but he was doing it all by himself. And then you have this masterpiece, which is generally known as Mona Lisa, and this painting was the creation of Leonardo. If we move forward, we have Michelangelo, and again he had so many fields at his disposal. Again, he was involved in poetry, in painting, in architecture, in there were other fields also which Michelangelo had explored and investigated. And then you have Raphael, who was a master painter. So the basic intention behind mentioning these three figures is just to give you the idea that when we talk about Renaissance and when we say that it was a great movement and when we say that it transformed the world, the reason behind this transformation was the hard work and the intellectual labor of great people, including these three. So this is all about understanding what is Renaissance. And after this lecture, in our next video, we will be learning as to how this Renaissance movement began in the first place. Like what were the motives, what were the intentions, and what were the ideas of the people who started their journey towards something that we now identify as the beginning of the Renaissance movement. I hope you understand. If you have any query or question, hoping that this is a far better audio than the previous one, and my sincere apologies for recording that video in not in a very good manner. So hope to see you next time. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.